Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to tell you is nothing short of historic today. Venezuela, a collapsing narco state with a dictator who's got a $50 million bounty on his head, just made the single dumbest move of his entire miserable career. Nicolás Maduro, the man who turned one of the richest oil nations in the world into a starving cartel-run nightmare, stood in front of the cameras and effectively declared war on the United States of America. That's right, guys. He didn't just threaten Trump. He threatened you. He threatened America. He threatened me. He threatened the most powerful military in human history. Maduro promised a bloodbath. He promised to sink American warships, and he vowed to destroy the very empire that keeps his regime in check. But here's a twist that nobody saw coming. The second he opened his mouth and poked the bear, that so-called declaration of war, well, let's just say it instantly turned into a nightmare, not for America, but for him. And so today, as I'm speaking to you guys, Trump has already unleashed the kind of overwhelming response that dictators like Noriega, like Saddam, like every tin pot thug in history only realized too late. America does not bluff. America does not back down. So the real question isn't if Maduro will regret this. The real question is how fast the collapse will hit and whether anybody in his own army actually survives long enough to flip sides. So, hey, this isn't just another date on the calendar, guys. This is the day that Venezuela officially crossed the line. This is a failing narco state, guys, run by Nicolás Maduro, a man with a $50 million bounty on his head, decided to do the unthinkable. He decided to declare war on the United States. Now, I want to repeat that, guys. A dictator who can't even feed his own people has now threatened the most powerful military in human history. And don't think for a second that this isn't, that this is just bluster. Venezuela isn't some far off nuisance, okay? Under Maduro, it's become ground zero for drug cartels, funneling fentanyl, cocaine, and chaos straight into American communities. Every overdose, every family shattered by cartel violence, that blood is on Maduro's hands. And so now here's where it gets insane. Maduro didn't just wag his finger. He went on record looking straight into the cameras and threatened to sink U.S. Navy warships in the Caribbean. He promised a bloodbath if America dared to act. He actually said the end of the American empire was near. Wow, sound familiar, right? Well, if it doesn't sound familiar, it should. This is exactly the same kind of suicidal bravado that we saw with Manuel Noriega back in Panama, another two-bit dictator who thought that he could just stare down the United States. You remember how that ended, right? Marines at his doorstep, his regime in ashes, his name erased from history. Now, Maduro just wrote himself into the same story. And the ending isn't going to be pretty. I'm just saying. But here's the thing that you really need to hear, guys. What happened next was even more shocking because President Trump's response wasn't words, it wasn't tweets, it wasn't a press release. It was pure force, steel, and firepower moving straight toward Venezuela. Now, you've trusted your doctor for years, but Medicare, those networks, they changed constantly. And one day you could be told, well, sorry, we don't take your plan anymore. Well, this is why I partnered with Chapter. They make sure that your doctors and your specialists stay covered. Sharon Bertusik experienced the exact pain of losing her coverage, but after calling Chapter, she secured a brand new plan that protected her care. That is absolutely amazing, totally a blessing. So ask yourself, wouldn't you rather prevent this problem than deal with it later after the fact? It's a whole lot messier then. Most people are already doing just that by calling the phone number on the bottom of your screen right now, or they're going to the website at askchapter.org/Ron. The phone number is 909-563-8279. And tell my friends over at Chapter Ron says hello. So President Trump, he wasted no time after Maduro's reckless declaration. Within hours, he gave the order for one of the largest U.S. military mobilizations in the Caribbean in decades. This wasn't symbolic. This was a full-scale reminder of what happens when a rogue dictator threatens the United States. And so, yeah, the USS Lake Erie, a guided missile cruiser capable of intercepting aircraft and missiles, was deployed first. And so then, right after the USS Lake Erie, then came three of the Navy's most capable destroyers. I'm talking about the USS Gravely, the USS Jason Dunham, and the USS Sampson, all armed with Tomahawk missiles, advanced radar, and anti-submarine warfare systems. Beneath the surface, the USS Newport News. This is a nuclear fast attack submarine, took position invisible to, it's invisible, but it's always within striking distance. And on top of all of this naval firepower, nearly 4,500 U.S. Marines were placed on alert, ready for amphibious operations if Trump gave the word. Now, this deployment, it was clearly not a bluff. This was a deliberate demonstration that the U.S. will never allow narco-terrorists masquerading as governments to dictate terms to Washington. Trump made it clear, American citizens will not be threatened by a man clinging to power through drugs, intimidation, and foreign backing. And make no mistake, this military buildup is directly tied to the narco-terrorist core of Maduro's regime. Venezuela today is not just a country with bad leadership. It is a hub for international drug trafficking. Fentanyl, cocaine, all pumped out of South America, find their ways into American neighborhoods, destroying lives and fueling a cycle of violence and addiction. Now, cartels don't just operate in Venezuela. They are protected by Maduro. His government functions as basically a shield for these groups. And so one of the most notorious, the Tren de Aragua, is officially designated as a terrorist organization. It's not just Venezuelans who suffer from them. Their reach extends all the way across the Americas, and their violence has already touched American soil. These are the people that Maduro is protecting while threatening to sink U.S. ships. Now, Trump had already shown he was willing to strike. Just last week, he authorized a precision operation that sank a Venezuelan drug vessel leaving port. Now, that one particular mission alone killed 11 cartel members, cutting off a shipment that would have ended up on American streets. It was a signal, and it was received loud and clear. Now, this is why today, a $50 million bounty hangs over Nicolás Maduro's head. That's the same level of bounty once reserved for Osama bin Laden. Now, think about that, guys. The United States government now views Maduro as being in the same league as the world's most notorious terrorists. This isn't about politics. This is about national security, about protecting American families and making sure narco states never gain the upper hand. Now, how many of you folks who are watching the show right now truly appreciate and care about your freedom and your protection? If you do, comment safety 47 down below. Now, by declaring war on the United States, Maduro didn't strengthen his regime. He exposed the criminal network that props it up and put himself directly in the crosshairs of the most powerful military on earth. Maduro's declaration of war isn't just about one dictator lashing out. No. What makes this particular situation so much more dangerous, it's that the network of foreign backers that are behind him. Because when Maduro rattles his saber, he's not only leaning on his own military, he's also leaning on Russia, China, and Iran. Now, for years, Russia has been Venezuela's lifeline. Russian state-owned operatives and companies have invested heavily in Venezuela's oil company and oil industry, keeping cash flowing into Maduro's pockets even as his economy collapses. And so Moscow has already shipped weapons and intelligence equipment into Caracas. Now, just this past May, the Kremlin signed a new strategic partnership agreement with Maduro's regime, signaling their intent to stay deeply involved. And that's not just economic or symbolic. Russian intelligence officers are believed to be operating inside Venezuela, providing training and surveillance support. Then, of course, there's China. Beijing has loaned Venezuela over $60 billion, not to be repaid in dollars, but in oil shipments, essentially turning Venezuelan resources into Chinese leverage. Now, China has also been very quietly embedding itself into Venezuela's infrastructure, securing influence in critical sectors and basically tying the regime's survival to its global ambitions. And so we cannot forget about Iran. The Maduro regime has worked with Tehran on pretty much everything from fuel shipments to security cooperation. There has been even whispers of Iranian proxy operatives moving through Venezuela, expanding Tehran's reach into the Western Hemisphere. Guys, the nightmare for America it's clearly obvious. A hostile alliance of Russia, China, and Iran entrenching themselves just 3,000 miles from Florida. It's not that far away. So here's the twist. Maduro's war declaration didn't just project strength. Okay. It exposed weakness. Already immediately, cracks began to show inside of Venezuela itself. Reports surfaced of Venezuelan military officers reaching out quietly through back channels, trying to essentially secure their futures if Trump's retaliation goes down hard. Now, even his own generals know the U.S. Navy is something that they just cannot stand against. Meanwhile, Maduro looked outward for help, and he found himself utterly alone. He pleaded with the United Nations for intervention. He begged China to provide military support. He tried to paint himself as the victim of American aggression. But not a single country stepped forward to put itself between Venezuela and the United States. Even his so-called allies understand the reality. When America, under Trump, moves warships, submarines, and Marines into position, no one dares stand in the way. And this is where the nightmare becomes clear. Maduro may have thought he was rallying his family, his people with fury and fiery rhetoric, but in truth, he isolated himself completely. His threats completely backfired in his face. His officers were hedging their bets, and the world is unwilling to risk confrontation with the United States. And in less than 24 hours, what began as Maduro's declaration of war, it became his own worst nightmare. A spotlight shining on just how fragile, corrupt, and vulnerable his regime really is. Now, President Trump, he's not looking at this as just a fight with Nicolás Maduro. He's framing it as the opening chapter in the most aggressive anti-cartel campaign in American history. Now, for decades, cartels in Mexico, Colombia, and across Latin America have operated with virtual impunity, sending waves of fentanyl and cocaine into the United States. These organizations grew rich and powerful while American families buried their sons and daughters. Previous administrations, they talked about the problem. They issued warnings. They slapped sanctions. But under Trump, the gloves are off. With U.S. destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and thousands of Marines already staged in the Caribbean, the signal is crystal clear. This ain't theater. They're not bluffing. This ain't posturing. These deployments are the very first steps in a campaign to dismantle cartel networks at the root. Now, Trump has already proven he's willing to go further than anyone before him. Just last week, his order to strike a narco-terrorist vessel leaving Venezuela killed 11 cartel operatives before they could deliver poison onto U.S. soil. That was a single boat. Now, imagine that multiplied across an entire network of smuggling routes. The nightmare for the cartels and for Maduro is only just the beginning. And so this brings us to the impossible position that Maduro now finds himself in. By declaring war on America, he has placed himself in a box with no exits. If he backs down, he looks weak and cowardly in front of his own people. Not a good look for him. And dictators live and die by their illusion of strength. The moment he shows weakness, his grip on power begins to slip. But if he follows through on his threats, if a single missile is launched, if a single shot is fired at American warships, the response will be swift and devastating. In fact, the U.S. military could dismantle his entire regime in hours. And Maduro knows it. His generals know it. His people know it. This is why reports are already emerging of Venezuelan officers quietly planning their escape routes. They're watching Trump's deployments with dread, calculating how long they can stand and, stay loyal before survival demands betrayal. Now, for them, it's not a question of if Maduro falls. It's a question of whether they can get out before the collapse begins. And here's the cruel irony here. Maduro thought declaring war was going to strengthen his image as a strongman, but instead it accelerated the countdown clock on his regime. He has painted himself into a corner, and every path forward leads to disaster. So by declaring war on America, Maduro didn't secure his role. He signed his own death warrant. So what's happening in Venezuela is not isolated. It's part of a bigger pattern, the same battle President Trump is fighting here at home. I mean, just look at what's been happening inside of America's own borders. Cities like Chicago, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and even Los Angeles, they've been rotting under decades of failed leadership. Crime spiraled out of control. Drug gangs treated, entire neighborhoods like their own personal kingdoms. And local politicians did nothing but wring their hands while families suffered. Trump came along. He came back into office with a mandate to fix all of this. And what's he doing? He's seizing control of these crime-ridden cities. He's bringing law and order back into places that Democrats had written off as lost. And it's not just policy. This is a complete reset of how America is dealing with crime, gangs, and cartels. So connect the dots here, guys. The same fight is expanding beyond the US border. Trump has made it clear the United States will not clean up its own streets. It will shut down the international networks that are feeding the chaos, period. So just as Nayib Bukele in El Salvador threw tens of thousands of gang members into prison and reclaimed his country, Trump is using the same full weight of American power, military, economic, and political to go after the cartels, the traffickers, and the regimes like Maduro that give them cover. And this is not just foreign policy. This is Trump's doctrine of total war on narco terror. So if you poison American communities, if you protect cartels, if you threaten the United States with violence, you're going to face consequences you cannot survive. And this is why the title of this video is exactly right. Venezuela may have declared war on America, but the nightmare does not belong to us. It belongs to Nicolás Maduro. His declaration exposed his weakness. It revealed the corruption and the dependency of his regime. It drove wedges inside of his own military. And it also left him begging for protection from allies who are nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, America, under President Trump, is stronger. Our military is prepared. Our communities see a leader who's refusing to tolerate lawlessness, whether it's on the streets of Chicago or the harbors of Caracas. Trump has flipped the script. The United States is no longer on defense. We're on offense now. And the enemies of this country are learning that lesson the hard way. So the only question left is this: does Maduro's regime collapse under his own weight, betrayed from the inside? Or will U.S. power deliver the final blow and end the narco state once and for all? Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, guys. Do not forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it so that the truth continues to spread faster than the lies do. Before you go, check out the next video that YouTube's recommending right now. I guarantee it's one you're going to want to see.